The wind picked up just as they began lowering Darren's casket. I tightened my coat, though the chill wasn't from the weather. The few people who'd come, mostly old neighbors, and one man from his unit, stood back, silent. I stood alone at the edge, holding the rose I'd picked that morning, the last flower from the bush he planted on our 25th anniversary. It had bloomed late this year, like it waited for him. Silas wasn't there. Not even a call. Not even a lie about traffic or work. I waited until the casket settled into place. Then I stepped forward, leaned down, and let the rose slip from my fingers onto the wood. It landed quietly, softer than I expected. A whisper goodbye. That's when my phone buzzed in my coat pocket. I pulled it out, half expecting, hoping it might be Silas. An apology. A last-minute "I'm sorry I missed it, Mom. Are you okay?" But no. The message read, "Hey, Mom." Me and Kenzie were thinking the trust would be the perfect birthday surprise. "Let's talk soon." I blinked at the screen. Read it again. Then a third time. No condolence. No "how are you?" Not even a mention of his father's name. Just the trust. Just her birthday. Just money. I turned the screen off and slipped the phone back into my coat. The grave hadn't been covered yet. I looked down, and for the first time that day, I felt something sharper than grief. I felt insulted. Darren worked all his life for that trust. He clipped coupons, drove the same truck for 2 decades, refused every cruise offer and luxury purchase. That money wasn't a gift, it was a choice. A promise. Now, my son wanted to use it on champagne and balloon arches. The funeral director stepped beside me. "Whenever you're ready, ma'am." I nodded. Once, then. Walked away, leaving the text unanswered. And Silas, too. I didn't cry on the ride home. I didn't turn on the radio. I just drove. The kind of quiet where you don't even notice your hands on the wheel. The kind of quiet that follows a goodbye you never got to hear. The house felt colder than usual. I stepped out of my shoes, laid Darren's photo on the hallway table, and made myself a cup of coffee I didn't drink. I sat in his chair by the window. The one he always said had the best view of the birds. There weren't any today. Just as I reached for the blanket beside me, my phone lit up on the end table. A notification. I didn't want to look, but I did. A friend had tagged me in a photo. I tapped it, and there they were. Silas and Kenzie. Standing by a pool I didn't recognize, holding champagne flutes in raised hands. Smiling, sun on their faces, laughter frozen in pixels. The caption read, "B-Day Bash Begins." Kenzie turns 30 in style, "Wanner pool party, wanner love him, wan grateful, grateful." My son missed his father's funeral to sip champagne and pose for pictures. Grateful. I zoomed in. Silas wore the navy button-down Darren had given him last Christmas, the one he never wore. He'd called it too stiff. Now here he was, wearing it for poolside photos, beside a girl who once asked if I still used Facebook. I turned the phone face down on the table. Outside, the sky had dimmed into violet. The coffee beside me had gone cold. I didn't bother warming it. Instead, I folded the blanket over my lap and closed my eyes, not to rest, but to keep from seeing the truth again. They were celebrating. And not one person in that photo had thought to call and ask if I'd made it home okay. I reached across the table and picked up Darren's letter, the one he'd left with the trust papers. I hadn't opened it yet, but tonight I would. The letter wasn't long. Darren never liked dragging things out. He said what he meant and didn't dress it up. I unfolded it with careful fingers, the paper soft from age, the handwriting still steady. "Merelda, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I wish I could have stayed longer, but we both know I've lived a full life with you. What we built, what we saved, it wasn't for things. It was for Silas, but only if he respects it. If anything happens, be strong for both of us. You know what's right. Don't let guilt be louder than truth." I pressed the letter to my chest and sat still for a long time. He'd written that the same summer he finalized the trust 5 years ago when his doctor first told us it was back, the cancer. I remember him sitting at the dining table, calculator in one hand, legal pad in the other. He canceled the beach rental we'd already booked. Said, that money belongs somewhere more permanent. He was always like that. Every bonus check went into Silas's college fund. Every tax return straight to savings. He even picked up shifts at the hardware store. When the car broke down, said pride didn't pay bills, but discipline did. He built that trust penny by penny. Said Silas wouldn't touch a cent of it unless he turned 35 or I signed off. Not because we don't trust him, he told me once, but because we love him too much to hand him something he doesn't respect. Back then, I believed it would keep Silas safe, give him security, a cushion against life's sharp edges. But sitting here now, with a cold mug in my hand and party music echoing from someone else's world, I realized Darren had built a wall. Not between Silas and the world, but between us and the version of him we never saw coming. The version who would trade grief for glitter. The version who'd look at his father's legacy and see nothing but a party budget. I opened my laptop. I needed to check something in the original trust file. The call came just after 10 the next morning. I knew the number. I stared at it until the ringing stopped, then let it buzz through a second time. On the third, I picked up. Hey, Mom, Silas said like nothing had happened. No mention of the funeral. No, how are you? Just that same too casual tone he used when he wanted something. I didn't answer. I let the silence stretch. He cleared his throat. So, about the trust. Kenzie's turning 30 this weekend, and I don't know, we thought it could be meaningful, you know. She's been feeling kind of overlooked lately. From the background, I heard her laugh, sharp, careless, like wind chimes in a storm. She said something I couldn't quite catch, and Silas chuckled along. It's just sitting there, Mom, he continued. I mean, I know what Dad said, but 30's a big deal. This would really mean a lot to both of us. To both of us. Like Darren's death had opened a gift shop, I still didn't speak. I pressed the phone tighter to my ear, not because I wanted to hear more, but because I needed to feel something grounded, something real, even if it was just plastic and static. Silas sighed. You still there? I was, but I said nothing. Look, it's not like we're being greedy. We're just asking for a small portion. We want to rent this place by the lake. It's really special. I can send you the link. I ended the call. No anger, no yelling. Just one small, decisive motion. The silence on my end said more than words ever could. 2 days passed without another call. I assumed they'd gotten the message, or at least found someone else to beg money from. I spent the morning folding laundry and refilling the bird feeder, anything to keep my hands busy and my mind from drifting back to the sound of Kenzie's laugh on the other end of the line. Then, in the middle of the afternoon, my phone chimed. A voicemail. No missed call, just the message. I tapped play. Silas's voice came through low and clipped. If she won't give it up, we'll get her declared unstable. It's not hard. She's grieving and alone. No one's around to vouch for her mental state. A pause. I've seen it done. We just need a doctor or two to say she's not fit. Then we can file for control of the trust. It'll be cleaner than arguing. Then a soft chuckle. Kenzie's voice barely above a whisper. Told you it would work. She's old school. Won't fight it. The message ended. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The air in the room went sharp, thin. I hit replay. Every word landed heavier the second time. Declared unstable. File for control. Clean. Not even a flicker of doubt in their voices. I sat on the edge of the kitchen chair, heart beating hard but slow, like my body hadn't quite decided whether to panic or go numb. I stared at the screen, then finally pressed save. They thought I'd break, that my grief would make me weak. that my silence meant surrender. But Darren had prepared me for this more than they knew. I stood across the room and opened the drawer beneath the old landline we never used. Inside was the envelope marked Richard Hale. Private. Darren had sealed it the day he signed the trust. I pulled it out, placed it next to my phone, and reached for my keys. I wasn't calling Silas back. I was calling the man who helped Darren build the wall they were so desperate to climb over. The law office hadn't changed much. Same bronze plaque on the door. Same worn leather chairs in the waiting room. Same scent of old books and something sharper like dust and decisions. Richard Hale opened his office door himself. He looked thinner than I remembered, a little more tired around the eyes, but when he saw me, he smiled with a kind of warmth that didn't feel forced. "Merelda Quinn," he said, stepping forward. "It's been a long time." I nodded. "Too long." He gestured for me to sit, and I did. I reached into my purse, pulled out the trust documents and my phone. I didn't speak, just pressed play. Silas's voice filled the space again, followed by Kenzie's smug whisper. I watched Richard's expression harden, not with surprise, but something closer to disappointment. When it ended, he exhaled slowly. "I'm sorry. I don't want sorry," I said. "I want a plan." He leaned back in his chair and picked up the trust. "Your husband had this drawn up tight. Conditions, oversight, protective clauses. You're the key holder until Silas turns 35. And even then, only if he's proven capable. And if they try to challenge it..." Richard tapped the papers. "They'll lose. But this isn't just legal. It's emotional warfare. They'll try to wear you down, make you question your memory, your judgment, your grief. They're not after the trust. They're after your footing." I nodded. "Then I need to take it away from them." He handed back the papers. "You'll need proof, patterns, audio, text, anything that shows manipulation or intent. If they try anything in court, you meet them with receipts, not emotion." I left his office with more than I came in with. Not just a strategy, but a shift. I wasn't a grieving widow anymore. I was a gatekeeper, and they didn't know how long I'd been watching them approach. That night, I pulled out the small recorder I kept in the kitchen drawer, the one Darren had used to remember his doctor instructions. I checked the battery. Then I waited for them to make the next move. The invitation came wrapped in sweetness. Kenzie called midday, her voice light and cheerful, like none of the last 2 weeks had happened. "We'd love to have you for dinner, Merelda," she said. "Just a small thing. To talk things over. Clear the air, you know." I said yes. I pressed the tiny recorder into the inner pocket of my purse before I left. I didn't plan to say much, I just needed them to be themselves. That had always been more revealing than anything I could drag out of them. Their condo smelled like candles and steak. Kenzie met me at the door with a glass of red wine already poured. "For you," she smiled. "You look lovely, by the way. Grief suits you, softens you." I took the glass. Didn't sip. Silas was already seated at the table, fork tapping against his plate. He didn't meet my eyes. Dinner moved slowly. Kenzie did most of the talking, trips they wanted to take, restaurants they'd tried, how she was thinking of starting a wellness podcast. Not once did she ask about Darren. Not once did Silas bring up the funeral. Halfway through the meal, she leaned in, her voice dropping an octave, her smile thinning. "Let's not make this difficult," she said, patting my hand like a nurse with bad news. "You've had your time with the money. You got the house, the life insurance. The trust is... It's legacy, Merelda. And Silas is the legacy now." I looked at my son. He kept his eyes down, his jaw clenched. Not one word of protest. "You've done your part," Kenzie went on. "But dragging this out, letting lawyers get involved, it's unnecessary. Let's handle this like family." I nodded, slow and quiet. Let them believe it landed. When dessert came, I thanked them, stood and kissed Silas lightly on the cheek. His skin was cold. He didn't look at me. Back in the car, I reached into my purse and slid the recorder into the glove box. They thought I'd walked into a trap, but I had just gathered the final piece I needed. The court date came faster than I expected. A thick envelope arrived by courier petition to assess my mental fitness filed by Silas Quinn. My own son claiming I was unstable, unfit, grieving too deeply to manage my affairs. They didn't even warn me, but I was ready. Richard met me outside the courthouse steps, calm as always. He carried a leather folder that held more than any words I could have said. Inside the voicemail, the dinner recording copies of the text messages and a signed evaluation from Dr. Elaine Harper, licensed psychiatrist, longtime friend of Darren's, and the one who sat with me for 2 hours last Thursday, just to make sure I was clear-headed and solid. I walked in, wearing the same black jacket I wore at Darren's funeral. It wasn't for mourning anymore. It was for remembering who I was when they thought I'd been erased. Kenzie sat next to Silas, legs crossed, eyes, scanning the courtroom like it was beneath her. Silas didn't look at me once. When the judge read the petition aloud, I felt nothing. Not rage, not heartbreak, just a quiet resolve. Then Richard stood. No drama, no accusations, just facts. He played the voicemail. Kenzie looked straight ahead. He read the transcript from the dinner. Silas shifted in his chair. He submitted the letter from Dr. Harper, stating in no uncertain terms that I was mentally competent, emotionally stable, and fully aware of the decisions I was making. Then he closed the folder and said, "Your Honor, this is not a case of concern for mental health. This is a case of financial coercion. And my client has endured enough." The judge was silent for a moment before turning to Silas. His words were even, but they landed like stone. "You'll leave this courtroom with nothing but shame." He dismissed the petition. No room for appeal, no sympathy. Silas didn't follow me out. Kenzie didn't speak. I walked through the courthouse doors into afternoon sun, each step quieter than the last. I had protected what Darren built. The next morning, I made coffee and watched the sunlight stretch across the kitchen tile. No phone calls, no apologies, just silence. And for once, it felt like peace. I sat down at the table with the trust documents spread in front of me. Every signature Darren had written, every clause he had carefully built. His handwriting was still firm, deliberate. He always said, legacy should be something you can stand on, not something you throw at people. Silas had shown me who he was. Now it was my turn to show him who I still am. I called Richard. We met that afternoon and I handed him the updated paperwork. "I want Silas removed," I said, "as beneficiary. Effective immediately." He looked at me, searching for hesitation. There was none. "And the funds he asked." I slid over a second folder. "Transfer the entire balance to the Blue Ridge Literacy Foundation. In Darren's name. Set up a program, books, scholarships, tutors. Something that lasts longer than a party." Richard nodded once. "He'd be proud of you." "I know," I said. He taught me how to finish what he started. That evening, I pulled down the old photo box from the hallway closet. Inside, near the bottom, was Silas's baby book. The spine was worn. The pages filled with faded memories, lock of hair, first drawing, hospital wristband, still taped in. I slipped in a folded note and closed it gently. "You weren't entitled. You were simply loved. But love doesn't mean surrender. And it never owed you inheritance, it offered you guidance. You chose to trade it for glitter." I placed the book back in its box and returned it to the shelf. No ceremony, no bitterness. The real gift was never the trust. It was the years we gave him, the dinners we skipped to save, the home we built with our hands, the sacrifices no one ever clapped for. He threw that away for lake houses and birthday candles. The sunroom smelled like pecan pie and ground coffee. Not the instant kind, real beans, slow dripped, just the way Darren used to like it. A few neighbors sat in folding chairs, paperbacks in hand, chatting about characters that didn't exist, and somehow still felt more familiar than the people we'd lost. I sat by the window mug, warm in my hands, nodding along. The group had been meeting every other Thursday since spring. Darren always said I should host something, but I never thought I had the space emotionally or otherwise. Now I did. The books we read weren't complicated. Stories about healing families that break and bend women who stand up quietly and refuse to sit back down. No one mentioned Silas. I hadn't brought him up, and no one pried. That kind of grief, the kind with teeth and memory, didn't need explaining. After we finished our second round of coffee, someone asked me how I'd been sleeping. I smiled before answering. Better, I said. Much better. Another woman leaned forward, brow furrowed. You look different, lighter, not happy exactly, but peaceful. What changed? I took a breath, let it out slowly. Because I stopped begging to be honored, I said, and started honoring myself. No one responded right away. There was a kind of quiet that fell when truth landed too neatly to touch. We moved on to the next chapter of the book. More coffee was poured. Someone asked for the recipe for the pie crust. Laughter bloomed somewhere between page 40 and a story about someone's grandchild drawing a horse with 3 legs. When the last guest left, I walked them to the porch. The sky had turned lavender, and the wind was softer than it had been in weeks. Inside the house felt still, but not empty. Darren's jacket still hung by the door. My pen and notepad rested on the table by the window, waiting for tomorrow's grocery list or the next sentence I'd finally be brave enough to write. I locked the door behind me, turned out the light, and let the quiet settle like a friend.